I have been hanging out and talking about this. Jason has a little cubicle over in our office at Catalysis. We're a not-for-profit education institute. And so we've been strategizing about a number of different things related to what he talked about in terms of trying to accelerate learning across the communities. So Paula Morgan is here. 20 years ago, Paul and I put together something called the Community Health Action Team, which he's going to talk about tomorrow, which was our attempt to accelerate learning inside the community. And so what I want to talk about is accelerate learning across communities. Because I think that when we're talking about these complex problems, the reality is nobody's got the right solution for all communities, but the methods they're using can be really valuable in terms of understanding how we might think about the problem in our own community as we see it being addressed in a different community. So one of the things we've been doing for a number of years is creating these across-community learning systems. And we call it the Healthcare Value Network. And it's a group of about 80 organizations now that come together to learn from each other, not to, copy and paste, but to actually learn about the processes that they're using to address particularly difficult issues within their own organizations. Now, what Jason and I believe is that this same kind of concept is potentially a way for communities to actually learn from each other. And so we've been working with a number of communities, a number of people in this room, to try to figure out how do we create that collaborative space. Because one thing I've learned is collaboration doesn't just happen. There has to be a structure and there has to be a process for collaboration to happen. And especially when you're talking about that across multiple communities, which makes it even more of a complex problem to solve in terms of trying to building that collaboration. So I just want to walk through how this collaboration works. This is what we do. We're basically an education institute. We run conferences and peer-to-peer learning networks and that sort of stuff. We have a number of collaborators, and I think this is important because as we think about collaborative learning communities, it doesn't happen with just one organization. I mean, there are multiple organizations involved. So like, for example, our organization is sort of the facilitator of this learning process, but we have a lot of partners that help us to actually build this facilitative learning process. So we're not doing it by ourselves. We're doing it with a whole series of others around the country, around the world. So this is what the network is. We've been at it for 10 years now. And we started with 14 organizations in 14 different communities. The idea was to spread the knowledge of these different practices, accelerate the learning journey, and drive change. So this is action-based knowledge. This isn't something where we sit in front of PowerPoints like we're doing right now. We actually go out to where the work is being done, and we learn from the people that are doing the work. So for those of you that know what the GIMBA means, that's where the value is created for the customer. And that's where we go to actually do the learning, is in the actual place where the value is being created. What we found is that diversity is really important. So when you go to a tiny little rural hospital in northern Maine, from a huge academic medical center in Boston, there are some amazing things that you can learn in that little tiny rural hospital in Maine. And so that diversity of thinking and of organizational type is an important part of this collaborative learning process. And I think you have to be open to the possibility that you could actually learn, if you're in this big academic medical center. So you have to be open to the possibility that you could learn from somebody in a completely different setting. And so this collaborative learning process is not for everyone, because some people aren't willing to do that. So the point is here that there's a commitment to share, participate, and host. So that, if you're going to join this healthcare value network, you have to be willing to do those things. And that means, 40 or 50 people are going to show up on your doorstep every 2 or 3 years to learn from you, and you're then have the same opportunity to go learn from someplace else. We do about 20 of these visits a year. So here's an example. I just pasted an email that went out the other day to this network, this learning network. So our friends at Healtheast are starting a lean initiative in sepsis reduction and are interested in learning from network members. If you've been working on that in your organization and have successes with your updated bundle or learnings to share, please report. So what we've done is said, okay, there's a number of people that are working on this particular problem. Let's get those people together and start talking about what they are learning and the processes they're using to actually address this problem. And there's probably some type of collaborative learning like this going on at least a couple times a week within the network itself. So this is an example of, we're not facilitating anything here except just getting the information out. And then, what we find is maybe 3 or 4 organizations will simultaneously, respond to this, and they'll actually self-aggregate into a community around this particular problem. Here's all of the network members that we have at the moment. There's over 70, and as you can see, they're quite, spread out throughout North America. So, our hypothesis is that this same kind of concept, if we can do this across multiple organizations and multiple communities around North America, why can't we do this on complex problems that communities face as well? Because some of these healthcare problems are pretty complex. So I think there's a lot of potential commonness to this process that we're using. Now, the other thing is, how do you fund this? Because if collaboration doesn't just happen, then you have to create an infrastructure. Now, Jason is a one-man show at the moment, trying to facilitate both Skillsfest and some of the other things that are going on within this community of communities. And what we found is that there are some players that are willing to sponsor this. So these are key businesses throughout North America that have been willing to come together. Now, they are part of what I call the extended supply chain of healthcare, right? So, Cardinal does a lot of medication things. HGA is an architectural firm. Gold builds hospitals. Herman Miller makes office equipment. And these other companies. So, I think the question is, are there some companies that actually could help us in this process of creating learning communities? So what is the benefit of being involved in a collaborative learning community, right? So these are some of the benefits. We actually go on site and spend time with the organization. We do an assessment of the organization. We've created a very extensive collaboration website so people can, build different sort of departments or compartments within the website. It's only for the network members, so it's not a public website. We do a lot of education and different types of activities related to the problems that these organizations are trying to solve. So the point being that, if we're going to build a collaboration infrastructure, we need to have some expertise about what it is that we're trying to do, right? So if we were thinking about a collaborative community, we would want to think about what are those skill sets that are required for that infrastructure to be able to actually help communities work on some of the problems that Jason showed at the start of this morning. So we do 20 visits a year to one of those 70-plus organizations. So that means you have 20 opportunities to go visit a place that's doing or working on some of the same problems that you might be working on. And then a lot of education and several other types of visits that these organizations are interested in, particularly in manufacturing, where some of these concepts have been around for a long time. And then, so we actually yearly do an assessment of each one of these organizations. They get a report card, so to speak, on how they're doing. So you might think about that. Well, let's see, we're working on poverty. Can we create an assessment where we figure out, how you're doing on that, and is there a way to compare that performance across time? And then, these are just some of the other things that they get as a benefit. So this is the website that you can go on. There's lots of different video learning activities. So we can actually take you to a particular place like Herman Miller and show you a lot of different activities that you may be interested in from the standpoint of your journey of learning operational excellence. And then you can see all the different places that we're going to be going, so all across the country, actually all across North America. So I think the point is, here's a number of things that these people want to know. So the question is, if we're thinking about this from a learning community of communities, what are the things you want to know? And then can we build an infrastructure to actually talk and work on what are the things that you want to know? And I think that's the value of this learning community. This is what they want. It's not necessarily what communities would want, but it's what this learning community of healthcare organizations wants. So that's a really quick overview of this concept of building learning systems across communities. In this case, across healthcare communities. And I think that's kind of the question at hand is that something that would be of value if we think about it from the communities that are represented in this room and the problems that are trying to be solved? Because I'm a big believer that nobody's really got the answers. All we have is a bunch of questions. And the types of questions that one community is asking to try to address problems can be very valuable in helping other communities in trying to address some of the same issues. I think if you've seen one community's poverty problem, you've seen one community's poverty problem. It's very situational. But back to what Jason started with, are there methods that we could be sharing to actually address some of these problems? And how do we share those? And my suggestion is that building a community of learning communities is a powerful way to do that, and we know how to do that now, and we have the infrastructure to do that. So I'm going to stop, and I think I'm probably about 20 minutes.